There are interpretation options. You can use Bulgarian or English, and that should be in a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, we are fortunate enough to have young people today joining both in the panel discussion later on and also in the audience. Alice is our child safety focal point, so you can email her. Her email will pop up in chat shortly if you need to get in touch with her. She will be ensuring that all the young people are feeling safe and happy. Participation is obviously voluntary. No one is obliged to answer or say anything. We are on a very tight schedule today, more so because of, I'm sorry, those technical hitches. So I would ask everyone to please speak to time. That is for all the speakers. But we do want you to chat along using the hashtag putting children first. Now, we would ask everyone who isn't currently speaking or on the panel to switch off their videos and microphones. We will call on you when it's time to hear from you. Today is, as I said, World Children's Day, and we celebrate the 31st anniversary of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. I will now give the floor for the welcoming address to George Bogdanov, who is the co-host and the executive director of the National Network for Children in Bulgaria. George, over to you.
Здравейте! Добре дошли на всички на този сутрешен вебинар. Аз ще говоря на български. Радвам се, че ние от Националната мрежа за децата сме домакин заедно с Eurochild на този сутрешен вебинар. И като домакин много съжалявам, че не мога да ви предложа български сладки закуска, но това виртуално пространство пък ни дава възможност да сме много повече хора и да участваме тук. Целта на тази наша среща е да дискутираме как защитата на правата на децата укрепва нашите демокрации, къде е пресечната точка между правата на децата и демокрацията. И ще обърнем специално внимание на предизвикателствата, с които се сблъсква движението на правата на децата в България и как предстоящата стратегия на Европейския съюз за правата на детето може да помогне на правителствата да осъзнаят своя ангажимент към правата на децата. Националната мрежа за децата е обединение от над 130 организации в България, които работят всеки ден с деца и с семейства. Ние годишно помагаме и подкрепяме над 96 000 деца, 13 000 семейства и се застъпваме за правата на децата в България. През последните 4 години обаче и в България, но и не само, в цяла Европа, сме свидетели на една безпрецедентна атака срещу детските права. Крайно десни политически партии и формации, както и религиозни фундаменталистки организации проповядват идеологията, че децата нямат права, че децата са собственост на родителите и те могат да правят с тях каквото си поискат. Използват се фалшиви новини, изкривени истини, включват се цели фабрики за тролове в социалните мрежи за разпространение на различни конспиративни теории. Основната им цел е родителите да бъдат наплашени, да всяват страхове, използвайки децата, а оттам и да придобиват власт и така, че да станат от управлението на нашите държави. Като резултат от тази тенденция в България беше отменена стратегията за детето и вече 2 години ние нямаме такъв стратегически документ. Стратегията за семейството в Румъния, например, беше отменена. Ситуацията в Полша и Унгария е изключително тежка по отношение на правата на децата. Във Франция и Англия движението на конспиративната теория на QAnon изведе стотици родители на протести. И всички тези тенденции свиват пространството пред гражданския сектор, работещ с деца и с семейство. Защото е нападнат както от политическите субекти, така и от тези антидемократични движения. Има конкретни нападки и охулвания на активисти за детски права, а в такава среда участието на децата е дори опасно, защото те също могат да станат обект на нападение. Та въпросът днес пред детските правозащитни организации е не само как да поставим детето в сърцето на европейското възстановяване, но как да поставим детето в сърцето на европейската демокрация. Така че днес ще разискваме това. Благодаря ви, Дженифър.
Thank you very much, George. We appreciate you setting out our agenda for today and telling us why, of course, it's so important. I will turn now over to our host for today and for all this week, Her Excellency Mary-Louise Kilieva-Preka, Eurochild's President. Mary-Louise, lovely to see you again this morning, and tell us your thoughts. Today is the most important day of our week of webinars.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning to all. Today, we commemorate the 31st anniversary of the most widely ratified convention in history, the UN Convention for the Children's Rights. The UNCRC was built on the Declaration of the Rights of the Child of 1924, which was then adopted in an extended form by the United Nations in 1959. From a historical perspective, we know that children's rights have been on the international agenda for a very long time. The commemoration of the UNCRC provides us with the opportunity to reaffirm that children's rights are also founded on the Declaration of Human Rights. Today, therefore, we must acknowledge not only the fact that children's rights are human rights, but also safeguarding them is fundamental to effective and healthy democracies. This important discussion today comes at a time when serious concerns are rising across Europe. The rise of anti-child rights movements is a reality. The fact that they are gaining much support is truly worrying. Anti-child rights movements are abusively taking to social media and using fake news to be able to get their messages across. They are threatening not only children's rights, but also threatening human rights and our democracies. I call upon all democratic governments to rise up to their responsibility to support the plight of child rights organizations, to put a stop to such anti-democratic behavior. Governments cannot be complacent on such misdemeanors. As democratic societies and democratic states, we need to unite against this terrible threat to our children's potential and future. Children have rights which have been ratified by all European Union member states and are part and parcel of the acquis of the European Union. Our governments and authorities have the direct responsibility to ensure that children are acknowledged as valued rights holders in our societies. Child participation is important. It must be safeguarded, promoted, and encouraged, as it is an inherent part of strengthening our democracies. From Eurochild's very own experience, from recent consultations with children from across Europe, children clearly spoke of their involvement in decision-making processes. Children have stated that they yearn to have their opinions heard by decision makers. The Europe Kids Want survey indicated that 43.2% of respondents clearly stated that they are unhappy with the way cities or towns engage with them. Eurochild is also getting reports of child rights defenders being told to shut up when speaking, such as in city councils. Findings by a Eurochild report, which was published this week, titled Growing Up in Lockdown, Europe's Children in the Age of COVID-19, highlights that children's voices remain underrepresented in decisions taken by governments. This report by member organizations from 25 European countries finds that only 2 countries out of the 25 safeguard the right to child participation, while another 7 countries stated that child participation is safeguarded in a reasonable way. Eurochild believes that to ensure the success of the recovery process, it is necessary that children are recognized and acknowledged as valued partners. It is a complete undemocratic misconception to perceive children as passive citizens. Children are part of our present society and very soon will become tomorrow's leaders. Child participation is needed to rebuild responsible, sustainable, resilient, and democratic communities and societies. We need to ensure that their voices and their rights are at the heart of all recovery strategies and plans. I urge our decision makers to involve children and young people in global, regional, national, and local policy dialogues. I urge the European Union to set up the proper mechanisms to enable children to participate in making processes. Child participation must be structured. We are looking forward to seeing children taking a central role on equal footing with other demographics in the Future of Europe conference. We are also looking forward to their participation in building the European Children's Rights Strategy. We believe that Europe can be the leading global child rights champion. Children are important drivers of change. We need their participation for the realization of inclusive, equal, equitable, resilient, and peaceful societies. However, anti-democratic movements are threatening several European countries. These movements are challenging our very fundamental human rights. The COVID-19 crisis has increased traction for such a threat to our democracies. We are also observing that the space for child rights organizations is shrinking. We are worried as it is leading to a backlash in the protection of children's rights and subsequently leading to reforms being left on the back burner by some governments. Children's rights activists are under attack in Europe. And here, I would like to convey our support to two Bulgarian child rights activists who have been under attack by anti-children rights movements. Milena who is a member of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, which is the UN body responsible for the monitoring of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And our very young co-host today, George Bogdanov, who is the executive director of the National Network for Children in Bulgaria, have been under assiduous attacks. These last 2 years, George was so constantly attacked that he had to file several cases in court due to counteract against the hate speech, insults, and slander he was subjected to. George suffered all this just because he is a champion and an activist for children's rights. I therefore would like to urge the European Union, national governments, other international and regional organizations, such as the Council of Europe, to be more vociferous and effective in keeping in check these anti-democratic movements. I would also like to assure Milena and George that we are standing by them and with all children's rights activists. We stand together. Nothing will deter us from continuing with our work to safeguard children's rights across Europe. We will continue to work tirelessly to address this democratic deficit. Strengthening our democracies is not a choice, it is a must. Finally, I must reiterate my statement that we at Eurochild are optimists. We have hope. We have confidence in the European Commission, led by Her Excellency, Ursula von der Leyen. We also must acknowledge the great work and the ongoing endeavors of the EU Interparliamentary Group on Children's Rights. We have also great trust and confidence in you, Vice President Suica, who have made time today to be with us. Vice President Suica is showing great commitment towards child participation and in child's rights organizations and defenders. Your Excellency, Vice President Suica, we are glad you are here with us today. And we are very keen to hear your words. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie-Louise. Thank you, Your Excellency. Dear children, dear minister, dear fellow speakers, dear ladies and gentlemen. As you know, children are close to my heart. I say this not only as a mother and grandmother, but also as a former teacher and mayor of Dubrovnik when I established the first Children's Council there. This was the catalyst for kicking off a tradition of child participation in the city decision making. As all of us know, today is the 31st anniversary of the adoption of UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Today is therefore a day for celebration, but it is also a day for us to reflect on what else can and needs to be done for children. There is lots for us to do now more than ever in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. And because we were all children once, we must hold on to the idea that a child is child everywhere, no matter what their background or where they come from. I support the children in fulfilling their potential as engaged, responsible citizens. For this to happen, participation in democratic life needs to start during childhood. It is every child's right to express their views on matters that concern them, including the future they dream of and aspire to. As members of society, children are engaged. Some are activists, agents of change, and influencers. They are the voters of the future. There is still not only the voters, but also the leaders of the future. There is still a common perception that children have nothing to say or teach us until they become adults. Two young girls, namely Malala and Greta, have proven that wrong and show how vital it is to engage in a dialogue with children while they are still children. All public policy matters concern children, from education, family, and child care policies to consumer protection and telecommunications issues. Concretely, we need to teach adults and decision makers how to support children as engaged, responsible citizens, starting from raising awareness on child's rights. I am proud to say that our work has already benefited from the vision and ideas of many children. The recent EU Forum on Rights of the Child saw the active participation of children. You were shaping, organizing, and leading debates and workshops. You participated in high-level panels and shared your innovative ideas and honest opinions. The consultation for our strategy on the rights of the child benefited from contributions of 10,000 children. I am very encouraged by this. This is where my work on bringing forward the new and comprehensive European strategy on the rights of the child comes into play. This strategy is anchored in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and enshrined in Article 24 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. This new strategy will be adopted in spring 2021 and is designed to embed the perspective of child rights in all European Union policy areas. Secondly, we aim to strengthen the role that children play in shaping priorities at the European level. And thirdly, the strategy will contribute to raising the visibility of the rights of children across the European Union. This should also help raise the visibility of children's rights at national level. I want to take this opportunity to encourage all of you who have not already done so to reply officially to the open public consultation on this strategy. It closes on the 8th of December, so please ensure your voice is heard in this important exercise. Let me be clear, we understand that child protection and support is also a member state competence. The European Commission is committed to supporting member states in their child protection and support actions. This, of course, includes Bulgaria. It is our ambition that the upcoming EU strategy will be taken on board by all members in their bid to bring about positive change and progress on children's rights, support, and protection. Through our strategy, we can encourage member states to devise their policies with the best interest of the child in mind. We can call on member states to work more closely with child rights organizations. Indeed, we recommend the adoption of national strategies or action plans to strengthen child rights. This will ultimately reinforce the implementation of member states' obligation under the UN Convention on the Rights of Child. And now I want to say a few words about the study on child participation that we are working on. The underlying Commission is determined to strengthen the democratic process, but it cannot happen without children. We are working on an ambitious study to provide a comprehensive analysis of the participation of children in the political and democratic life of European Union. I want to thank Eurochild for its great work on this study. Let me already highlight some preliminary findings of this study. Children are usually involved in policy planning, but rarely in implementation and in evaluation processes. Most mechanisms are usually for adults and children over 12 years. And I welcome that there seems to be an increasing effort to reach out to vulnerable and disadvantaged children, including children from diverse backgrounds and with disability. These are only initial findings, and the good news is that we expect the study to be ready by the end of this year and in time for inclusion in our strategy. Finally, let me say that in the upcoming Conference on the Future of Europe, for which I'm responsible in the Commission, children will have an important role. So, Your Excellency Marie-Louise, you can be assured that they will have a role in the Conference on the Future of Europe. Our upcoming strategy will call for the active participation of children in the Union's democratic life, thereby strengthening the role of children in Union's present and future. Therefore, structured children's dialogues will be an integral part of this conference. Dear children, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to raise awareness, organize events and contributions to make sure children's voices are heard in the conference. While children are future voters and leaders, you are already important actors in the here and now. We want to hear from children from across the European Union and beyond, and take them forward with us in our policy making. In short, the policies of today and tomorrow is made for both for and together with children. This is how we strengthen our democracies. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you very much, Vice President. We very much appreciate you taking the time this morning in your very busy schedule to talk to us on this special Children's Day. Do you have a moment for one follow-up question?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I just would like to ask, what is the European Commission planning to do for civil society organisations, and whether there's any financial incentive or other support that the EU Commission can offer?
We cannot imagine our future, our work, without having civil society on board. Regarding Conference of the Future of Europe, civil society will be one of the key stakeholder for us. So even civil society which are dealing with the children and children rights. So you can be assured that without civil society there is no future. So be assured you will be on board, or they will be on board, and we will take all the ideas into consideration. And as I said, the Conference of the Future of Europe is more listening exercise. So we will listen to them and then try to include or translate their ideas into concrete policies. So the civil society will help us shape European policies.
And just finally then, is there anything that you heard from Marie-Louise Precker earlier, that the civil society, NGOs such as Eurochild and Support for Children's Rights are being attacked by anti-democratic movements? What can be done to support them or to defend them against these sorts of attacks?
We have many different anti-discrimination, anti-racist, we have different acts in this commission. So we will help them definitely and support them.
Thank you very much once again. We do appreciate it. The more support we get is so much the better, particularly today. Thank you again for joining us, Commission Vice President on Democracy and Demography.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to the next part of our webinar today. We will have a panel discussion. I will introduce each of the panelists with a short question, and they will give their reflections on that theme. And then we will move on to the discussion round. Please do use the Q&A function to send through your questions to our panelists. I would ask that you try to keep the questions concise, and if they are directed at a specific panelist, please indicate that, or if it's for the whole panel, please indicate that as well. If due to time constraints we don't get the chance to answer all of your questions, please rest assured they will be forwarded to the speakers after the webinar, and we will be taking them all into account in the post-event report. So it's worth asking the question, even if you know we're running short of time to answer it in today's live webinar. So with that, I will ask the panelists to switch on their microphones and switch on their cameras, but leave their microphones on mute, as I will introduce our first speaker, which is Denica Sacheva, the Minister for Labour and Social Policies in Bulgaria. Thank you very much, Minister, for being with us. I will ask for your opening thoughts on how the government, the Bulgarian government, is reacting to anti-child rights movements in the country, and how does it ensure the protection of children's rights? The floor is yours. Minister, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Jennifer.
Great. Sorry about that. Sorry, I was introducing you. Thank you very much for being with us. And I was saying you're going to give us your thoughts and reflections on the theme of how the Bulgarian government is reacting to anti-child rights movements, anti-child propaganda in the country, and how it ensures the protection of children's rights. So thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear children, Your Excellencies. I'll be speaking in English as there are some technical problems with the interpretation, but allow me to congratulate all the activists for the World Children's Day in Bulgarian. Добър ден, радвам се, че мога да съм тук по време на този семинар и да поздравя всички активисти с Световния ден на детето. Improving children's welfare is one of the key priorities of the Ministry of Labour and Social Policy of the Republic of Bulgaria. Its realization includes comprehensive policies and measures aimed at providing complex care and protection of children, supporting families, quality education and healthcare, access to services, as well as adequate housing conditions. Undoubtedly, in recent years, the European Union and the member states have achieved a lot in a constructive partnership with the United Nations, with international and national non-governmental organizations. Guided by the principle of the best interest of the child, our country has set ambitious goals and has undertaken serious reforms. An illustrative example is the successful deinstitutionalization of childcare, by which we have achieved significant results. These results are related not only to the closure of the specialized institutions for children in the country, but also to their replacement by a well-developed network of services for support of children and families in a family or close to family environment. In line with the fundamental principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and in line with the European priorities, our efforts continued to be focused on creating conditions for equal access to fundamental rights to all children. One of our biggest successes of our government in the last years was the interinstitutional mechanism with which we introduced cooperation and coordination between the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labour and Social Policy, Ministry of Health, as well as municipalities and police officers, and we managed to turn back to school 40,000 children. 40,000 children who have dropped out of school. Just as an illustration, a generation in Bulgaria is 60,000, so 40,000 children back to school is 2/3 of a generation. Unfortunately, this big success that we were able to make was hit by COVID-19 and by the fact that schools and kindergartens in the country had to be closed, or most of the children had to go under online education. We have done everything which was possible in a short period of time in order to ensure possibilities for children from vulnerable groups, and particularly organizing computers, tablets, and also all kinds of infrastructure necessary for digitalization for children that are now placed in social services, but also for we introduced some new assistance and benefits for families who can benefit from the state while they have to take care for the children while schools are closed. The rushed digitalization under which our education system had to go had opened a lot of new questions like digital poverty, questions like digital literacy, and also on first place, we had to talk a lot about health culture, health prevention, and also promotion and promotion of tolerance. Because COVID-19, one of the lessons that has given to us is that we are so much interconnected that tolerance is fundamental and integrated part for the development of the democratic societies. Not on the last place, of course, all the children's policies in Bulgaria, including also the work of the government and the governmental institutions, has been hit by the movements about which we are talking, movements about political propaganda and in certain way geopolitical interests that are using children's rights in a very vulnerable manner. Of course, what we managed to do is to create a very active dialogue between different movements, between parents' organizations, and due to the coordinated efforts that we had together with the civil society sector, we were able to introduce the Act on Social Services, which was very fundamental, particularly for social services for children and families, but also for social services for vulnerable groups. Still, of course, we suffered these attacks, not only that the civil society was strongly hit, but also the image of the social workers in the system was deteriorated. And it took us a lot of efforts in order to build again confidence and trust in the social system, and particularly in the social workers. This is also one area where we have to build a lot in order to strengthen the capacity of the social system, in order to have a very long-term strategy about the human resources in the social sector and the investments that are needed in the social sector professions. Because when we are talking about the professions of the future, we always talk about the technological professions, but all the professions that are linked with humans and all the professions that are for the people are also very strong professions of the future. Of course, it is very important, everything which is happening is a very important test for the civil society and for the cooperation between the state and the civil society. And in this respect, I think that we need to strengthen more our mutual cooperation so that we were able to prove that what we are doing is in public interest and is not part with the propaganda that is trying to hit us. I'm very happy that Bulgaria will be implementing the pilot project of the EU Child Guarantee, which will focus on 2 of the 4 target groups of the vulnerable children, particularly children with disabilities and children living in precarious situations, in particularly Roma children. In the past years, Bulgaria has invested in the establishment of new services for children, including early childhood development services. And building on this work and the results achieved so far through the EU Child Guarantee, we will invest in 4 types of services, such as home visiting services for children, early childhood intervention services, inclusive preschool education services, and outreach children and family centers. With the EU guarantee, child guarantee, we will be reaching approximately 6,410 children, including 700 children with disabilities, over 6,000 parents, and approximately 600 professionals across sectors. When we invest in children, we actually invest in the future of the next generation and in the prosperity of our society. And I hope and believe that with joint efforts, we will be able to create the necessary conditions for the full development of all the children. We will be able to build the society they deserve, a society based on dignity and respect for every child, a society which is intolerant of violence against children, society that encourages the participation of its youngest members in the decision-making processes which are important to them. a society in which the welfare of the children and the right of every child to family and family support is a leading priority, a primary responsibility, and a personal cause of every one of us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your opening remarks. We'll turn now to our next panellist, and that is Baroness Massey, a member of the UK House of Lords and the British delegation to the Council of Europe, very specifically the Subcommittee on the Rights of the Child. So, Baroness, I think you're going to tell us a little bit about what the Council of Europe is doing. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm delighted to be here. I congratulate the organisers on this very important set of seminars on putting children at the heart of Europe's recovery. I'll first talk about the relevance of the Council of Europe, its Parliamentary Assembly, where there is much dialogue about children, supported by our brilliant secretariats. The Council of Europe is the human rights arm of the European institutions. In 2006, it launched a programme, Building a Europe for and with Children, guided by strategies for equal opportunities, participation, freedom from violence, child-friendly justice, and rights in the digital environment. At a recent meeting of its steering committee, the next strategy for 2022-2027 was discussed, and member states expressed the wish for the Council of Europe to continue its ambitious agenda for children's rights. Over the last 3 years, parliamentary committees have produced at least 30 reports on children and children's rights. I'm currently engaged in 2, the impact of COVID on children and child participation in Europe. Please contact me if you have anything to say about either of these or anything else. I pay tribute to the Council of Europe's Children's Rights Division and the Lanzarote Committee, this latter concerned with the protection of children against sexual abuse and exploitation. These 2 bodies are truly inspiring in their work for children. Also, I applaud dedicated politicians and commissioners who support the rights of the child across Europe. We sometimes have setbacks, but can inspire each other, supported by European institutions and the dedicated voluntary sector. I salute children for their resilience and determination. I felt truly enhanced by such dynamic people. My latest struggle is to try to get the UNCRC incorporated into legislation in England. This has been done in Wales, and Scotland has a bill in progress to do the same. There's always something good going on somewhere. Much work on children is, of course, about child protection, quite rightly. But to influence the future of our own countries and the world, we must also empower children from an early age, empower children. Involving children in our political structures and systems, in which not only gives children a voice to speak out, it helps organisations, parliaments included, to look at themselves with fresh eyes and gain insights which they may never have thought of. We are currently carrying out a child participation initiative in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, involving 8 countries, aimed at involving children in the politics of the Council and learning about children's rights. I have to say I'm dismayed by some attempts in some countries in Europe and elsewhere to oppose child rights under the banner of family values. But this is not an uncommon slogan, family values, and we must not be deterred. I used to come across it all the time in battles on sex relationships education, but that's another story. I hope that we can, in the interactive session, address how individuals and organisations can support each other to develop children's rights, encourage active spokespersons amongst children, and influence politicians and other lawmakers. Ultimately, we need to change legislation and the moods, the atmospheres of our countries towards children. We need collaboration, determination, inspiration, proofs of success, and we need child participation in all this, and we need your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Baroness. Now, our next speaker is Bruce Adamson, who is the chairman of the European Network of Ombudsmen for Children. Bruce, you've heard our other speakers, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you think are the main challenges facing the protection of children's rights in Europe and what ombudsmen can do about it. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. As we celebrate the 31st anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the recent celebration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, which has disproportionately affected children, and particularly those children whose rights were already most at risk: disabled children, care experienced children, and those children who were experiencing poverty, which we know has such a fundamental impact on their rights. Technological change is bringing increasing challenges as well as opportunities. And as Her Excellency said at the beginning, across Europe, we've seen an increase in retrogressive attacks on human rights and human rights defenders. Yet we see young people leading the change to challenge this, leading movements on climate justice, on anti-racism, anti-misogyny, and calling for change. We, as the European Network of Ombudspersons for Children, are 43 independent children's rights institutions across Europe, working within our national remits to promote and safeguard children's rights, but also working in solidarity across Europe. And we're grateful for the support that we have from the European Commission and recognizing the importance of independent children's rights institutions. And our strong domestic partnerships with civil society are reflected in our European level engagement with the great work of Eurochild. This week at ENOC, we agreed a common framework of reference around children's rights impact assessments, which we know are so essential in ensuring children's voices are heard within decision-making and that decisions are made in children's best interests. Over recent years, we've issued key statements on rights in the digital world, which we know is changing by the day, and in relation to children and young people's mental health, which we know has been significantly impacted by COVID and the restrictions put in place. And so working with the international human rights mechanisms and improving our domestic legal structures are absolutely essential, because the Convention on the Rights of the Child sets children at the heart of our democracy. As Baroness Massey has just said, there is progress being made here in Scotland. We have a bill before our Parliament. It's a bright ray of sunshine in what's been a very gloomy year, and it's no exaggeration to say that it's the most important piece of legislation we've had since devolution. Putting rights into law is essential. And equally though, there is a democratic deficit. Children and young people don't have the same political power as adults, nor the same economic power to lobby or influence. And so it's incumbent on all of those in power to make special efforts to ensure that children's voices are heard in all decisions that affect them. And they need to do so by engaging with the creativity and energy of children. It can't be sitting around a boardroom. It has to be in the community, in places speak. And I think today, the essential role that civil society plays as human rights defenders, we must unite and protect human rights defenders and recognize the important role that children play as human rights defenders themselves, as highlighted by the Day of General Discussion at the United Nations in 2018 and the ongoing work on that. It's been a huge privilege for all of us across ENOC to work with so many inspiring children and young people. Because being a human rights defender is more than just knowing your rights and exercising them. It requires action, standing up, speaking out, and demanding change. And challenging power is always difficult, and children face additional pressures. They don't have the same political and economic power as adults. We have to do more to protect them. So as we mark the 31st anniversary of the UNCRC and the 22nd anniversary of the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, we have to recognize and celebrate the role of human rights defenders. But it's not just about celebration. We have to improve the way we encourage, equip, and support and protect human rights defenders. We need to listen to them, and we need to deliver change to make sure that all children's rights are properly respected, protected, and fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have our next speaker is 16 years old. Her name is Milena. She's from Sofia and she's participating in the Eurochild Children's Council. She's also involved with the youth program of the National Network for Children called Megaphone and is active in the National Bulgarian Safer Internet Centre. Thank you very much, Milena, for joining us. Can you tell us about your experience in decision making and the importance of media literacy for children?
Thank you, Jennifer. Of course I can. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Milena. I'm 16 years old and I come from Bulgaria. It has been just a year and a half since I started my sort of child rights adventure. I realized that my experience is nearly 1% of yours, and yet we're all here to discuss the importance of one particular question. Why are child rights so essential, and the idea behind it? What can we do so that we as a society fulfill our ambition for a world of mature democracy and shared solidarity? I actively participate, as Jennifer said, in the Eurochild Children's Council, the youth panel of the National Bulgarian Safer Internet Center, the youth organization Megaphone, and I participate in the project between Eurochild and the National Network for Children Reporters. My involvement with these organizations has given me the opportunity to learn many important lessons. I've realized that I have to cherish my rights, and more importantly, I've learned how to use my rights. My goal is to take every chance I get and share with those who listen that what children have to say is a lot, and what we are excited to learn is even more. I have prepared an example for this one. So English grammar actually proves me right, because the present continuous tense is used for talking about arrangements in the future, for later than today or at the moment. For example, tomorrow we are learning not to trust fake news. Therefore, participating in today, the present, is our goal and our basis for later, the future. One particular problem in child rights organizations that child rights organizations face is the river of disinformation that flows without containment every day. Our rights are a cause that awakens different emotions in people, because it is not something everyone is familiar with. Many skeptics about child rights tend to believe that statements like rights come after 18, or that you shouldn't give too much freedom to children because they don't know how to use it. Don't we? People with such way of thinking, I believe, are scared of their own imagination and are usually the victim of what has become our greatest enemy, disinformation. I believe that the solution is easy once there is agreement. With proper education, with extensive campaigns and workshops, and with responsible media communication, the river of disinformation will dry itself to disappearance. We strive for agreement on the fact that child rights are all about recognition, and that young people are members of society whose voice has to be accepted. We are not naive or greedy. We want our voice to be heard and rights respected, because the decisions made today concern our future.
Thank you very much, Milena. We appreciate you joining us. And of course, feel free if you want to answer any questions in the panel. I hope you feel free and confident to join in if you wish. Thank you again. Now, I would like to say sorry to those of you who were trying to get the interpretation to work. Despite our best efforts, it seems the gods of technology are against us today, and we're not going to be able to provide interpretation live for this webinar. However, we will do our best to get translated versions available in some form later on. So you can read in the chat there in both languages what we're attempting to do, but again, our apologies for that technical glitch. The next part of our session is going to be the panel discussion, but before we do that, I'm going to ask the audience a question via a poll. So if you want to take part in that, we would be delighted to hear your thoughts. So the first question is, thinking about the role of the European Union, which of the following actions will be the most effective in promoting and protecting children's rights? Financing child civil rights society organizations, training EU officials on children's rights, providing political leadership and monitoring how member states are protecting children's rights, enabling children to have their say in EU decision-making, or developing tools that will ensure policies and legislation respect children's rights. So that is a multiple choice question. Simply click on which of those you think is the most effective potentially in promoting and protecting children's rights. I'll read them again in order to give you a chance to vote. Financing child rights in civil society organizations. B, training EU officials on children's rights. C, providing political leadership and monitoring how member states are protecting children's rights. D, enabling children to have their say in EU decision-making. Or E, developing tools that will ensure policies and legislation respect children's rights, for example, child rights impact assessments. So that's our first question for the audience. Please do vote. We will give you a couple of seconds there to vote. I'm sure that many attendees. Okay, let us see the results. Oh, we still need a few more of you to vote, but I think we'll go through that question again, thinking about the role of the European Union. So this is at EU level, not at national level or local level, which of course have their own particular challenges. We will come on to a question on national level next. This is the European Union level. The most effective is financing child rights, training EU officials, providing political leadership and monitoring member states, enabling children to get involved, or developing new tools to ensure policies and legislation respect child's rights. I think you've had enough time. If everyone who has voted by now, let's have a look at the next question. So the next question is thinking about national governments. So this is the national level. Which of the following actions will be most effective? Having a national action plan or strategy for children's rights, creating or continuing to support an independent children's ombudsperson, supporting free child helplines, supporting child's rights civil society organisations, or providing child-friendly information to children. I hope you will be able to vote. We are providing translation there in the chat. So the national governments have got various options available to them. Please vote on which one you think is going to be most effective in promoting and protecting children's rights. There's several options there. So let's take a look at the results. All right, so in the first question, developing tools that will ensure policies and impact and legislation respect children's rights is the most popular, but it's pretty close, as having children involved in their say and financing civil society organizations are all very, very highly rated as well. So thank you for participating in that. We'll now go on to our questions. The first question is to Baroness Massey. Do you believe that what do you believe that governments could do to ensure child participation in the political and democratic process?
I think there are many answers to that one, depending on where you are living, of course. I think that we should involve children at a local level, first of all, whether in their schools, in their youth clubs and so on, to interact with their local politicians, councillors and so on, and then also to interact with their parliamentarians and talk to them in order to have influence on what is going on in Parliament, so parliamentarians can carry back those messages to their colleagues. And gradually, I think it will grow as a kind of impetus if this happens with children in the lead at local and national levels.
Thank you. And same question there to Minister Denitsa Sacheva. What can national governments do you believe, to ensure child participation?
I can tell you that, for example, in Bulgaria, we have a child council, which is at the state agency for child. And in this child council, we are actually discussing with them all the different decisions in the area of education, health, and social policy. Particularly as I saw that in the chat, there is one question about ensuring the voice of children with disability. In this Children Council, there is quota for children with disabilities, so children with disability participate in this council. It is also a matter, especially these days when we are talking about so much about disinformation and propaganda. It is also very important that we ensure sound information and not so much information, but maybe public education campaigns about the children's rights and about the fact that children are not anymore subject of protection, but object of rights. And that is why that we have to invest more, particularly in dissemination, more information and more public education campaigns, particularly in specific groups of people which are more fragile towards disinformation campaigns.
Thank you, and thank you as well, Minister, for answering that question from our audience member, Sarah Todorov. Our next question is for Bruce Adamson, and it's how can we support child's rights organisations and children to advocate for children's rights, but also to fight these anti-child rights movements?
It's absolutely essential that we support civil society and all human rights defenders, and we need to do that by providing funding. We need to do that by providing legal protection. We also need to do it by providing public education on rights. And so we need to do that through the formal education system, but we also need to do it through broader public education, because it is an obligation on the state to ensure that human rights defenders are protected. And that includes ensuring that the voice of civil society and children is properly funded and supported. And I think technology plays a really important role here, because the rapid change in technology has really changed the way in which those that are attacking human rights and those that are supporting regression in human rights are able to work. And so we need to put legal protections around the way in which technology works, and children and young people are going to be able to lead us here, because they understand the use of their technology in a way that many of us who are older do not. And so that rights in a digital world is really important. And again, I commend the work the UN's doing at the moment on a new general comment on rights in the digital world. And again, the work that the Five Rights Movement's been doing to support that.
Thank you. Same question to Colin Chicluna. Thank you very much for joining us, Head of Cabinet of Vice President Sucha, who had to leave us but gave her opening address earlier. So thank you very much, Colin, for being here. That same question to you. How do we fight against these anti-child rights movements?
First of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to replace the Vice President, who unfortunately had to leave earlier. First of all, I think the poll that you just announced a few minutes ago is very telling, because it's certainly interesting to see that the focus wasn't only on funding. Funding is extremely important, of course, and the European Union does quite a lot to support civil society organizations of all stripes, including children's rights, civil society. But I think a very important aspect is the creation of the space in which this can take place and raising the awareness. Now, I think the institutions help with building specific institutions for children, but we have to be careful not to just pay lip service and just have these institutions there for show. It's important to give them some teeth. And I know that many of us have heard people who are skeptical about this kind of thing saying, but children are younger, they're less experienced. And to those, I would, if Milena will permit me, I will invite them to spend a few minutes talking to you, who have been so eloquent in such a short period of time in making the case and in showing just how important the contribution of children can be. And one of the important parts of the job that we are doing is to create this space and to make sure that children's rights and awareness on children's rights is mainstreamed across a whole slew of policies that the European Union is working on. And therefore, I think that it's important to really focus on this aspect and to give the opportunity to these organizations to be able to flourish.
Thank you very much, Colin. Now, we're going to move on to a question now, again to Baroness Massey. What can the EU and the Council of Europe do to ensure that the space for child rights is not shrinking, that the organizations have enough space to get their message across?
I think that we could do several things, and we're trying with this initiative that we have on child participation to do that. And we're looking for ways in. And I think that we have to invite children to join in our institutions, whether it's a parliamentary institution, such as a local council, such as a national parliament, such as the Council of Europe or the European Union. We have to invite children in, and we have to allow them space to tell us how they feel about specific issues. For example, climate change, for example, how elections are managed, all kinds of things that we can think of in our own countries and internationally. So I think that's the first thing we have to do. And I think I agree with this issue about funding. I think it's not always a matter of funding. It's a matter of how you manipulate, change things to allow children in. I think we've then got to follow this up with children actually being involved in the monitoring of what is going on for them, and not just having them in and then saying something and going away again, but actually following it up with children and asking them what they feel about how things that we've done have impacted, how things we've done together have impacted on their perceptions and their actions in their institutions.
Thank you. The same question, Colin, to you. How do we provide this civil society space and ensure that the space for child's rights organizations is not shrinking?
First of all, I think it's worrying that we see the space for civil society in general shrinking in certain parts of Europe, let alone the rest of the world. And I would actually argue, and I don't say this just because I'm with this particular audience, but I would argue that children need perhaps to be given a little bit more space than anybody else, because they are probably the only category that does not have access to direct representation in our institutions by virtue of their age. You know, a lot of other deserving sectors of our society, the disabled, the elderly, the minorities, they can get their representatives elected to parliaments. Children cannot. They have this structural difficulty. And therefore, I think we need to do just that extra little bit more to be able to make sure that their voices are heard and that the space is provided. And we're trying to do this, first of all, through the Conference on the Future of Europe. As the Vice President said, we are focusing very much on providing
Okay, Colin, I think your internet has frozen. Yes.
Am I back? Oh,
You're
sorry.
back, yes.
I was saying, in the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe, we want to provide space not only for children to talk to other children, but also for children to participate in the broader debate. And I think that this is something that we will certainly be doing. And in the elaboration of the children's rights strategy, we have specifically been consulting with children, and we have had the input, as the Vice President mentioned, of over 10,000 children to this consultation, and still counting. So, thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Milena, you want to comment on how children can get access to these spaces and tell us your experience and your view.
I do believe that child participation is a key point when it comes to child rights, because after all, it is all about our future and how can we improve on this topic. So yes, child participation is important, and there are different ways, campaigns, as I said, workshops, and even proper education. But maybe if this isn't enough, I want to ask, how can we do that? So what is there to be done so that we can actually fulfill the child participation so that it is existent? Because I have gotten my opportunity and I take the most of it, but what about children that have even more potential but don't have, let's say, enough digital literacy or even access to, let's say, a phone? Yeah, so I believe that this is an important question.
Thank you, Milena. And do you think that voting rights should start at 16? We heard from Etu, your colleague, on Wednesday's webinar, asking for that. Do you agree with that idea?
I do not believe that voting should start at the age of 16, but I do believe that education on voting should start earlier, because we do have this right after we become 18, but what about people who have no idea what voting actually is? So maybe if this becomes a school subject, or we discuss this at some point in our educational life, I do believe that we need a little more information on this, because 16 can be early for voting, but 18 gives you the right you don't know nothing about. So yeah, this is an issue, and I guess we should work on that as well.
Thank you. Great to have your insights today. I'm going to turn now to Bruce and ask whether you agree with the statement that EU member states should have national child rights strategies in place. I'm sure you're going to say yes.
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely yes. Again, when we look at the general measures of implementation, about the things that you need to do to make rights real, having a national strategy is absolutely key. But it's important that that strategy flows through every aspect of government decision-making. It shouldn't just be focused on things that are seen as children's issues. Children's rights have to be embedded through transport policy and planning, particularly budgeting. We need to have child rights-based budgeting. And it also needs to be very clear about how children are going to participate in all levels of decision-making. We shouldn't just be restricting children's rights considerations to those things that are seen as children's issues, because everything is a children's issue. And I think that the really good strategies that we do see across Europe take this approach, that it's about embedding children's rights and the best interest of children through every part of government decision-making. And so particularly around things like budget setting and decision-making have to be absolutely key. And we've seen great examples of young people really leading the way and being quite challenging about things like transport and the links to things like climate change and what we need to do to change all of our structures, and things like addressing structural inequalities as well, that we've seen young human rights defenders really leading the way in challenging government strategies and children's strategies to change the way that things work. So every EU member state must have a strategy, but it needs to be meaningful and it needs to be all-encompassing.
Thank you. Minister, your thoughts on that, about what sort of strategies specifically are needed at national level, and whether it should be obligatory for member states perhaps to have some sort of strategy in place?
I'm very cautious when we're talking about obligations, because at the moment we are at a very important crossroad, that we need to build again trust in the fact that when we are talking about children's rights, we are talking about strengthening democracy and about better welfare. Because we have to admit honestly that we have been hit a lot by the different propaganda movements and by the different disinformation campaigns, and we cannot act as if these two facts of life are not existing. So in this respect, on first place, again, I'm placing the public education campaigns, and particularly when we're talking about national strategies, it is not so much the education campaign that have to be done on a national level in the big cities and in the big capitals, but also the regional campaigns and the regional examples of protecting children's rights, which should be shown and much more put on in the focus. The second thing is strengthening all the professions that are linked with people. I'm once again mentioning this because I think that this is very important. It is very important to talk about the need of the social work and the fact that the social work is actually building the interrelations in one society and makes this society stronger. And the stronger a society interrelations are, the better answer to all kinds of different crises is, regardless whether this crisis is a health crisis or a political crisis or a crisis of the democracy. Of course, we have to consider that the quality of the policies is very strongly dependent on the quality of the people that are engaged in this implementation of the policies, because this is the link that we have to ensure. Many times, of course, we have beautiful documents, but these beautiful documents must be transformed into useful deeds. And policy is no longer just words. Policy is much more action these days. So from the actions depends the trust in the policy. And in this respect, I think that on a national level, it is very important that we strengthen the human resources capacity from the national level to the regional level and to the small local level, which is implementing these policies, because this is crucial for the success of the initiatives we are discussing today.
Thank you, Minister. So I'm going to take some questions from the audience now. The first one is for Baroness Massey, specifically on rights respecting schools in the UK and what pressure is put on to ensure that RRS are part of the school curriculum.
Okay. Yes, the rights respecting schools in the UK are, of course, tied into the UNICEF initiative on rights respecting schools, and I can't remember how many we have, but it's quite a few, and also in England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. And I think that they are their own proof of success, because they have had such an impact on enabling children to think for themselves about rights, speak about rights, and so on. And in a school I know, which we are using, and they're using us, in London, in our child participation initiative, they are a well-developed school, and they have outreach for the school itself, pupils from that school to go into other schools, including primary schools, to talk about children's rights and to talk about child participation in a very positive way. So I think that the UNICEF, the Rights to Respected Schools, are just a brilliant conversation that's taking place about children's rights. And I wish there were more of them.
Thank you, and thank you to our audience for that question. Another question from the audience from Ali Dunhill is, what is the panel's thoughts on the number of children in Europe that are aware of their rights, and how can we ensure that all children are aware that they have rights and what those rights are? That's also linked to another audience member, Veronica Donoso, is making the same point. For children to be able to participate, they must be well informed, and is this type of information available and accessible to children? Colin, perhaps you could take that question, or those questions from our audience.
I think about the information. I think probably children today are better informed than ever before, and also probably better informed than many of their older counterparts. But at the same time, this in a sense reliance on social media and on certain sources of news means that they're also far more vulnerable to misinformation and to manipulation. So I think it's very important that in our education systems, but also more broadly speaking, we take account of this aspect, and we try to make news that is child friendly. I hesitate to use that term because I think it sounds patronizing, but what I mean is to tailor it to that particular audience in the same way that we tailor information to other audiences. And children in this respect are as much consumers of this information as anybody else. So they need to be treated also as a demographic that should be addressed in a specific way.
Thank you. And then a final question from our audience, Bruce, I'll get you to answer it, is from Edward Waller, who has asked about children's right to learn about children's right. It's linked to those two former comments and questions, and also what Milena was saying earlier.
Absolutely. And I think when we look to the purpose of education, but we also look to the right to learn about your rights is absolutely essential. I think there's broader need for public education for adults as well around children's rights, but certainly we need to make sure that children's rights education is embedded through our formal education system, as is the right set out for children in the purpose of education. But also we need to see human rights education as broader than just the formal school-based work. So we need to be doing more broader public education in our communities. We need to understand what rights mean. They shouldn't just be a formulaic thing that you learn. They have to be done with creativity and energy. And one of the great things about being a children's commissioner is that I spend so much of my time in schools and in the community, and I see the kind of way in which children understand their rights through art and poetry and song. And it really demonstrates understanding what rights really mean, being able to communicate them in creative ways. And I think we need to think about that as adults, about how we can engage with children in language that they understand and use much more creative ways of ensuring that children's rights education is effective.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm conscious of time running out, and of course, as always, we haven't had a chance to answer all of the questions. So I'm just going to ask for a quick rapid fire round to each of our panelists in 1 or 2 words. What is your wish for this 31st anniversary, the birthday of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child? Minister, first for you, what's on your wish list for your present for today?
The attitude towards children is a major sign of the maturity and development of a society. And in this respect, the voice of our children today is our civil society tomorrow. So my wish is that we are able to extend our common understanding about children's rights to as many people as possible, so that we do understand the need that the child is subject of rights, and we have to ensure that the children's rights are promoted and in this way protected, because this is protection of and making our society more strong.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, very briefly, what is your wish today?
Incorporate human rights into laws at a domestic and European level, and support young human rights defenders who are promoting and challenging us.
Thank you. Colin?
Sorry. Well, allowing children to remain children is extremely important, but that doesn't mean that we don't listen to what they have to say. So I think that we need to really promote this idea, and remember that this generation in particular will always be the COVID generation, and that the long-term effects of this pandemic will follow them into their adulthood and throughout their lives. And I think that's very important that we bear this in mind and address this as a specific aspect. Thank you.
Indeed, we talked about that in our webinar on Wednesday, so do check out the report from that seminar. Baroness, your wish for today?
Thank you. Am I allowed 2 wishes?
Oh, okay then.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. First of all, my wish would be that for meetings like this to continue in Europe, to share good practices and support each other, and involve children in these meetings quite substantially.
Thank you.
The second wish would be that we do look at our legislation in a sort of top-down way, but that also, most importantly, and it's something that Denitsa was, I think, hinting at, that we have to get the grassroots movement going, and not just say, you ratify the rights of child legislation, you must do this, because it just won't work. We have to come up from the bottom and say, look, these children are being involved in this, and this is what a good impact it's having, and they would like to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Thank you for those wishes. And Milena, what is your wish for today on the 31st anniversary of the rights of the child?
Well, my opinion is that when speaking about democracy, voice and independent rights are keywords that come to mind. So nevertheless, the introduction of child rights faces a lot of obstacles, such as prejudice or disinformation. So it is my position that we should set the prevention of hate speech and the earlier education on child rights, so this becomes a game changer for our future and political and social ambitions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think with that, I don't know if I'm allowed a wish, but I suppose it's that we all bear in mind that you can judge a society on how it treats its most vulnerable, and we should keep that to the forefront. I thank all our panelists for your very great input. Thank you to our audience for your questions. I'm very conscious that we're running over a little bit, but I'm going to hand over for some final remarks to Marie-Louise Kiliawa-Preka, the president of Eurochild, and also to George Bogdanov, who is the Eurochild member from Bulgaria. Marie-Louise, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Jennifer. And to answer the key question of our session today, I would highlight 3 key threads that we heard. Firstly, given that we are celebrating Children's Day in the rather worrying backdrop of the pandemic and socio-economic crisis, I deeply agree with Minister Sasheva that when we invest in children, we invest in the prosperity of our societies. And as Milena underlined, children's rights need to be respected in the present, but decisions taken today influence their future. Secondly, all our speakers reiterated the importance of child participation, and that is truly encouraging. I could not agree more. Baroness Massey said that involving children in decision-making is strengthening their rights to speak out. It helps governments and parliaments to get fresh insights they may never have thought of. And Mr. Edmondson is correct in stating that everything in a children's issue we need to make child participation a core practice in our decision-making. Thirdly, there is immense political value in promoting children's rights. The recognition of children's valuable contribution to society still needs a lot of support and capacity building. The EU's upcoming and the Council of Europe's existing strategies on the rights of the child contribute to actively embedding a rights-based approach to policies across the board. The commitment of the Vice President made today an extremely important going forward, that countries will be working on national strategies on children's rights. We cannot rest yet, though. The situation in Bulgaria shows the value in safeguarding the civil society space. And finally, I would like to thank Vice President Suica, her chef de cabinet, Colin Shikluna, Minister Sasheva, Baroness Massey, Chair of the European Ombuds Network, Commissioner Adamson, Milena, thank you so very much for your insightful, inspiring contribution to this webinar. All the children who participated and all other participants. To you, George, thank you so very much. And to you, Jennifer, thank you. 3 days in a row, you have really moderated these webinars in a remarkable way. And last but not least, Jana, our General Secretary of Eurochild, and all the members of Eurochild themselves, the Eurochild Secretariat, who have worked tirelessly to make these 3 webinars on the occasion of World Children's Day 2020 so successful. Thank you so very much, all of you.
On behalf of National Network for Children, I would like also to thank you to all panelists, to all participants who are watching now this event, but also the people who will watch this movie on YouTube. Also, I would like to thank you to Eurochild for this very good theme which we had to discuss today. And really, really thank you to all. My main conclusion for today is that we have to work more. We have to be more ambitious. We have to act every day, not only to put the child at the heart of Europe's recovery, but also we need to work to put the child at the heart of European democracy and in our national level as well. Have a good day and happy 31st anniversary of the adoption of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Stay healthy.
Thank you, George, and thank you once again, everyone who has joined us, hundreds of you over the last 3 days. Please keep sharing this discussion. As George has said, it's the beginning of the discussion, not the end. There's more to do. Use the hashtag Putting Children First if you're sharing on social media to get everyone aware of what we are doing here today and what we're talking about on this 31st anniversary of the rights of the child. Thank you so much, Eurochild. It's been a great 3 days, and I hope we have the opportunity to do this again in the future. Have a great weekend, everyone, and I hope we'll all talk again online or in person soon.